Okay, and let's share my screen. That should be good. Awesome. Lawson and Katie, I see you guys in there. Hopefully you can hear me. Excellent, Lawson. Glad you are here. Thanks for joining us. We'll kick off right at the beginning of the hour. So we'll give everyone, they got 3 minutes. We'll be prompt, very prompt. We're excited. Andrew, it's still dark there.
It is very dark.
Yes.
Makes my light very bright.
I know. I kicked off a call nice and early this morning, and they're like, Erin, is it still dark? And I'm like, yep, it's still very
Yep.
much dark. The sun has not come up yet. So the joys of living on the West Coast. Darkness. This is that time of year too, where it is dark all the time. What is it? When does the sun go down in the afternoon?
4:30.
4:15 or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
4:30
it's
maybe.
sooner.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, I guess I was going
Or
glass
earlier,
half,
yeah.
half full with 4:30. I'm
Well,
lying to
what are
myself
we?
still.
Today's the 19th, so 2 more days until
more
like
days
the
until
longest
shortest
day
day.
of the or the shortest day of the year, and then we start getting our sunshine back. So, I mean, being in Arizona, I have a little bit longer days, but I definitely don't miss those days of living up in the Pacific Northwest. The summer is great because it's ridiculously long, so it's always nice. Okay, we've got another 2 minutes. Got some folks jumping in. Happy holidays, everyone. Give everyone a few more. So are you guys ready for holidays yet?
Got most of my shopping done.
Andrew, you've got kids, so you like have to be ready.
My wife does most of the shopping, and I have not really contributed yet this year. So she seems to have everything under control. So hoping all goes well.
I love it. It's you that I feel like that's generally the way. Mike, happy Honda days to you too. I'm loving it. We're going with the car theme here, I guess. So is this because all the dealerships are doing their like December to remember and all of the little themes for that? And Mike, do you drive a Honda? Is that also where we're at? He's not going to respond to me now, but that's all right. Okay, we've got 1 more minute. Hopefully, can you guys all see my screen? I love it, Mike. Lawson, I appreciate you. Thank you for giving me that update. So that is good to go. We are right at the top of the hour, so we are going to kick this off. I'm super, super excited for all of you guys to join us, as I also thank you, as I know this is an incredibly busy time of year, not only just with January 1st just around the corner, but we all know that we have that little holiday that's coming for all that celebrate it next year. I am not 100% ready, but we're going to get there because I still have the weekend. So I'm excited for that. But for everyone joining us, I'm giving you guys an early holiday gift as I like to see it. So I'm excited for our topic and our guest speakers that we have here today. We're going to be covering driving data quality to enable your technology success. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. So Erin McKenzie, I'm our VP of Client Services here at Newbury Partners, and I have the honor of sharing the mic with my fellow friends from the North. I should say they're my friends from the North when I live there in the summertime, but straight out of Seattle, we've got Andrew Berman, co-founder and CEO of Candidate IQ by Vetted, and my coworker and partner in crime, Joe Calzone, our VP of Front Office Implementations, who has just come back from an amazing safari trip in Africa. So if you want to ask him questions later, feel free to reach out. But for the next hour, we're really going to be diving into a multitude of topics, all really truly around data quality and how we can set your company up for success. These topics are going to range from what are these guys seeing for biggest pain points that are out there right now? How can we utilize automation to help us with data? How can we improve the lives of your recruiters, which we know is a huge, huge thing. And of course, we're also going to give you guys an open Q&A. Use the chat. Some of you are in it already, so I thank you for that. I will make sure to take a look at them throughout, and we'll also have a couple of minutes at the very end for some Q&A or follow up with us. So I am going to dive in and get us started. So Andrew and Joe, you guys are truly at the forefront of tech adoption. You're seeing it on a day-to-day basis. You're chatting with clients all the time. You're getting questions. So where we really kind of want to dive into is what are we thinking is like where we're headed for 2025? What's the big picture with data quality and automation for the recruitment industry? Joe, I'm going to start with you for my first question as we truly dive in here and we set this stage. What has been the biggest pain point that you have seen this year? Has it been adoption? Is it truly just bad data that we're seeing in the system? Or are you kind of seeing that there's just too much manual effort for making systems work?
Yeah, I think really within the context of automation and AI, especially the biggest pain point that we've seen is data quality itself. And I think everything else that you mentioned there, super valid items, but more a knock-on effect of poor data. It's really hard to adopt a new process, a new automation, a component of AI that you're putting in your system if you have poor data quality. It becomes less effective, it becomes more frustrating, and a lot easier to say, hey, this isn't working, let's abandon it. So it really does boil back to that data quality first and foremost. And I think that ticks the boxes on a lot of the downstream items.
Yeah, could not agree with you more. I think that's usually what I hear as well. Andrew, would you agree with us?
Absolutely. And I think, it's really all of the above in terms of just issues. And I think what we're seeing is a lot of stuff is just coming out of the woodworks. Like once we get into a database, there's all these now realizations of issues that have occurred, whether it was from a past tool, a past migration, just a strategy that no longer makes sense anymore. And so you have all these sort of legacy databases and systems, and now that AI automation is at the forefront and it's becoming very real, right? And that adoption is very exciting. But then again, you get in those realities, the little things can just really screw up an automation or having success with that. And that's really, I think the biggest thing that we're seeing, right, just across the board. And then every time you run into that, okay, well, what's the strategy to fix that, right? Do you need tools? Do you need people? Do you need change? There's standard operating procedures or change management or anything like that. So it's been, it's definitely a lot of issues, and it can be paralyzing at times as well. So I think that's the other thing is a lot of executives now are getting excited. They want to fix the database, but it's where do I start? What do I do? I might be uncomfortable with this. And so that's where, we try to help as best we can.
No, that sounds right. Because I mean, AI and automation has really been the talk of every conference that you go to this last year. That's kind of the center of conversation. And if you don't have data, strong data to support that and where you want to kind of bring that technology, you definitely are in for a world of problems. So let's kind of really dive into that. I mean, strong data quality is really where we need to focus. And without it, we're in a world of problems. So I know this past year, like I was saying, there's been a ton of kind of conversations around the automation side, around AI, but really if we kind of dive into automations, we've seen how can we build automations to help with data updates and workflow. And Joe, I'm going to kind of start with you again on this one, but can you walk me through like why would bad data kill automation, and how does it kind of impact that recruiter productivity?
Yeah, it's a great question. And uh, on the surface, it's pretty simple, but it becomes nuanced as you kind of dive down a bit deeper, right? So I think just generically speaking, your automations are going to be less effective if you have less reliable information. Consider an automation that requires 5 different data points to match to qualify for a list, and then that automation triggers. Well, if your records are out of sync with that data, doesn't have the correct information, has outdated information, you're going to have less records that qualify for that automation to begin with. That's going to make it less effective inherently. All the way through, well, if we have an automation that's targeting email addresses and we don't have an appropriate email address and we're getting bounce backs, that's going to lead to much lower impactful results as well, much lower ROI. And then you kind of go down into the weeds a bit more, and well, I'm the user that's setting up that automation. I'm seeing these really poor results. It's easy to get discouraged. It's easy to say, man, I'm banging my head against the wall here. So it really does start with refreshing that data. And then I think as you look a little bit further down on how do we refresh that data, how do we do that really easily without adding more work to people's plates? It's not fun to go reach out to a candidate and say, hey, I need updated information on your email address. I'm using a phone number to do that because I know the email address doesn't work. That just becomes more busy work. So how can you automate that? How can you make that happen behind the scenes in order to free your recruiters up to really build those relationships and not be focusing on the busy work?
No, it totally makes sense. And if you have that bad cycle of data, the reciprocal cycle of automation that's just triggering bad data over and over, you're also driving your candidates to, or your recruiters to work more outside the system when we really want them to be in the system. So that data quality is going to be huge. Andrew, I know you probably have something to probably bounce on this as well, and what you're seeing and chatting with clients and stuff on a daily
Yeah.
basis.
I think it's again the automations now are really bringing a lot of this bad data to the forefront, and so now it's frustrating. And I would say most people aren't used to buying data either, and so it's sort of okay. How do we correct the issue at hand? And I have we'll stat up on the right hand side or right hand corner, right? Just around even phone numbers. So they're running into things like, oh, we have, our phone numbers have decreased in terms of response rates. What are they? So then you have to figure out, okay, landlines, are they mobile phones? And then if they're invalid numbers even, or they're landlines, like what's the process to go and correct that? Is it a number that you have maybe in a resume? Do you have to go purchase that number from an external source? And even if you do, and there's a lot of services out there now that will help you just tell you whether it's a mobile phone or a landline or who the registered name is, but how do you actually reconcile that against the database? How do you update it? So all that effort, right? It's very time consuming, and so it can really slow down those automations. It can cause that frustration, the performance problems, and then it just like drops that confidence. So now it just sort of builds on itself in terms of not being able to have that reliable foundation to keep building for that success, because the data just keeps popping up and causing all the breakdowns, right, in automation.
Yeah, and when you don't have recruiters trusting what the data is in the system, I mean, then that's an incredibly impactful impact on their performance and their ability to be successful. So let me kind of go, Andrew, I'm going to start with you on this one. How often do you see recruiters probably wasting time on bad data? So you mentioned, Joe mentioned bounce back emails, you mentioned out of date phone numbers. I mean, what would you see as kind of, how would you address that question?
I mean, and this is where, and I think, Newberry's brought this up before, like how do you grade your database in terms of data health, right? And how many records in there are actually accurate and have all the complete information? And, I would say it's less than, 10% of the database, maybe even 5% have like a complete record. So there's always
Wow.
some gap that a recruiter has to go and figure out. It could even be like a missing zip code, right? What do? They didn't show up in a search. Where's that person located? But to correct that information, I mean, even if a record came in, let's say through a website, application, there's sometimes like 50 different checks to get that data properly organized into the actual candidate record. So one is, that never happens, right? Or recruiters are, they're operating quickly. So you get placeholder text, you get all this sort of bogged down in terms of, just time that, in the moment of getting the information in there, or when someone then interacts with it in the future, right, it would take 5, 10, 15 minutes to correct it. And if there's something like the phone number or the email use case, like, are you going to different websites to try to find that? Do you even know if it works? Then you have to test it to say, hey, did that bounce or not? So a lot of this is and I think even on 100,000 records, right, we're looking at 3 to 5 minutes. It's 5,000 hours to actually go through, audit, and update all those records. So it's just something that no one can do without specialized tools to help handle that and reduce that noise in the database, so that recruiters can operate within 80 to 90% reliable database.
That is a huge amount of time that would take, I mean, individual recruiters on that. I mean, gosh, just crazy. Joe, I mean, you're probably seeing the same. I don't know if you have anything that you've seen on that side as well, of where like recruiters are spending like their time wasting or anything for that
Yeah,
front, bounce backs.
absolutely. I mean, bounce backs is a classic example, but Andrew also, I don't know if you saw me crack a half smile. It was a bit of a sad smile, maybe a little bit of PTSD involved when he mentioned, zip codes or address searches, right? Really powerful feature within Bullhorn. Fantastic when your data supports it. A real game of whack-a-mole and frustration if your data doesn't support it. So really simple example here, right? Within the Bullhorn UI, it's going to expect you to spell out the state. It's going to expect you to put in a zip code. All fine, typically, if I'm Joe Calzone, I'm a recruiter, I'm in there, I'm inputting, candidate information as I'm doing a pre-screen. Like, the system's set up to store data that way. That's a pretty easy process. Takes a little bit of time to type it in, but consider if you have an upstream system that's processing lead records, or you're buying lead lists, or you have really anything feeding in upstream, and then it puts NY in there, or it puts WA in there instead of Washington or New York. That's going to affect your search results. You're also sitting there questioning your sanity, because I know that record's appropriate. It's brand new data. We just paid for it, or we just ingested it from this system that we pay a bunch of money for an integration with. Surely it's correct. Why can't I find it in the search results? Well, data standardization and really the intelligence of the ETL process and understanding, like, oh, well, that's the expectation. I need to format the data the way that the target expects it. So that one really resonated. That conversation pops up quite a bit as you look across the tech stack, almost independent of upstream systems there.
No, couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
I'm going to
this-
bring
yeah,
up
one-
something that, oh, sorry, Andrew, you had something there.
I was just gonna say, one more story I'd like to, talk about on just the data quality issues, right? It's that silent productivity killer, and
Mm.
it's also an opportunity killer as well. Because I share this, I started my career as a recruiter, but I remember my first, 2 weeks, I had to sit there and I had to make calls right to the database and just try to make as many calls as I could. Set a record. I think I had 135 calls in a day, but that's because so many of the phone numbers are just bad. So I spent all that time and effort, right, on bad numbers. Metrics look good, right? I wish I had, more conversations, but still, right? That was that was lost hours, and I never corrected it, right? Or you can flag it as, bad number or something, but like that whole, productivity killing that you don't even know, right? Whether it's bad data or just you're not getting production from that information because it's an opportunity loss.
Yeah, now those records are still sitting in the system, all that stuff that you called, and now someone else picks it up 6 months
Yep.
later. You may have gone wherever, and now they're calling the exact same thing. So it's, I totally get it, 100%. And so I'm going to bring up something that I hear on a regular basis, and probably Joe, you hear on a regular basis. And this is where we're working with companies that have old data, old data, or a ridiculous number of duplicates. And I think this is probably, I hear it all the time. So what would be like the way that you guys would recommend to fix this? Is this a cleanup process? Do they use Candidate IQ? What do they do with this? And I know probably, Joe, I'm going to start with you, because I think that you probably have some recommendations for clients on a regular basis when they have all that duplication of candidate data in there.
Yeah, Cleanup is an integral part of that, of course. That's how you're going to remove the pain. But I would really assert that the first step in the process is understanding the why. You will, I feel very confident you will continue to play whack-a-mole, even if you clean up your data, because if you don't understand the why, you will continue to get duplicates, right? So couple different items that pop up all the time. One can be just a lack of a standard operating procedure within the system when you're manually inputting information. Hey, I have spoken to this person, I got a referral, whatever the case may be. I'm inputting that record, overriding the dupe check or ignoring the dupe check. Like the human element and the lack of a standard operating procedure is certainly a factor there. But what we see quite often as well is, I'll refer to the nebulous term upstream systems, right? We have a bunch of records coming in, they're writing in via an integration or a CSV upload, whatever the case may be. If there's not a standard operating procedure there as well, you run the risk of inserting duplicates if there is no duplicate check. So really understanding the source is the critical first component there. And there's many options there, right? You can write reports. Newberry can assist. We run deduplications all the time. We have clients where we'll run quarterly deduplications, and we're talking database with 10, 12 million candidates, all the way down to we have 100,000, 80,000. The numbers don't matter as much. It's pervasive across all segments of the market, all industries within the market. It is the common issue of whack-a-mole dedupes, that are needed frequently there. So that there's options in terms of reports, as I mentioned. There's options in terms of let's write a SQL query to go find those duplicates. We do that quite frequently. But I would also say, reflecting back on when I had the novelty of meeting Andrew in person in Seattle, which, post-COVID, it was like, oh, an in-person meeting, like this is a thing. We get to put a face to the name and it's not virtual. This is amazing. That was, the first point where I was wildly excited about that. But I felt myself get very, very excited and the excitement build as we were looking at the tool. And I said, this is a game changer on understanding the why. It's not a difficult tool to use. It's not difficult to go in, run a bunch of different search parameters, fold those together, have it really spit out some really actionable, intelligent information for you and understand the why. And one item that really popped out to me, because I've seen it pop up many times over my careers, Indeed does this nice little thing where they'll genericize the email address and you get basically the same email address for like 100,000 clients. And I go, hey, Andrew, like, show me that one. And we went in and he goes, yep, here's this, database that we're using. Here's all the Indeed email addresses. And I go, this is a game changer. And I just had a massive smile on my face with like, man, everything that we can do with this and just simplify the process for our clients and remove the frustration for the recruiters, for the IT teams, for the leaders saying, why isn't anyone excited about these leads that we're bringing in, right? Because in theory, it should be Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross. I need the leads, right? Everyone's so excited about those new leads. That excitement wanes immediately when you go, well, that's 50 records of Joe Calzone. That's the same guy. I can see that even just looking in the system. What the heck? We were sold a false bill of goods here. So sorry, I got a little passionate there, Andrew. I'll let you speak. I promise. I'll put a period in my sentence now.
Well, Andrew, I'm going to hold you for a second. I've got 2 more questions and I'm going to dive into the next slide here. But Andrew, my next question is actually going to be for you because I love the passion that Joe has. And I think that probably everyone on this call can feel the frustration if you have worked with Indeed in the past. So knowing that Candidate IQ can also come in and help clean all of this up. But question for you, Andrew, when we have Candidate IQ, it all runs behind the scenes, right? So if we're updating candidate records automatically, what kind of difference does this make? Are we talking about like shaving? I know we chatted about the 3 to 10 minutes for zip code updates, et cetera, that you have to look at. But with Candidate IQ coming in, making these kind of major impacts and helping weed through all of this bad data, how many hours does this shave off from like a manual perspective for like our recruiters?
Yeah, I would say on a daily basis, you're taking hours off the day. And that would be because, again, we talk about just getting the data right for automation. So that's really hard to translate to say, hey, we need to make sure that all this information is going to be organized in a way that's going to trigger these different automations. So, even for the recruiters, or or the automation lead, right? They have to deal with these records to fix them, and that's just it's a sunk cost, right, in the day in terms of just you know fixing the information. But if you're talking hundreds, or if there's we have some customers who have almost 1,000 new records coming in per day, right? That is just a lot of data and information, and you want to also reduce the noise right within that. So not only getting that data right, but then if you have automations that are assigning those people to certain recruiters, right, or to different branches, or adding them automatically to a tear sheet, like that's where the real time savings. And so it's all that pre-work that gets automatically done once we've worked with the team, configured it to make sure that data is going to get structured exactly to how they want to see it, right? How they consider the internal data, how they want to use external data, and then they have that clear process to follow. So recruiters also know that it's done in a very consistent way, and saving them hours of time.
No, that's huge. And I know you and I had chatted beforehand. I mean, one of the key things it also sounded like, which would probably be great for like all the audience here, was having like some SOPs for data entry, like up front and stuff beforehand. And I know that was something that's very important for you to establish and stuff in advance. And I think you would probably agree.
Yep. No, absolutely. Yeah. And that's like, even for that, like with recruiters, they're trying to, if they're adding a record, they sometimes try to hack, the data entry, right? Or if the email's not obvious, like they'll put the X in there. So that all creates issues where, sometimes we don't want to overwrite any data in there, unless there's a specific situation. But in that case, if someone puts an X, we're going to see it as, there's something in there, and we can't necessarily overwrite it to save that time. So a lot of the standard operating procedures around just don't put in placeholder text because it'll automatically get filled in, right? You don't have to think about that. Even on skills as well. I think we'll talk about that in a bit, but a lot of that around what is the relevant data to get in, right? And then making sure that any of the placeholder information that they may put in there that it never even enters into the system.
No, so having those totally makes sense. So having the SOPs, really making sure that we have the quality data. I mean, this all is going to help shave off that time. Andrew, I've got one other question for you while we're still kind of digging into the data section here, and then I will promise transition here. I brought up at the very beginning of when I kind of brought up this slide, I talked about how automation has been huge kind of topic of conversation, both automation and AI at different conferences. And it's just been in conversation when we're having chats with our clients on a regular basis. When you look at Bullhorn automation, which we do a lot of, does it complement Candidate IQ? Can you give me an example of kind of how the two systems would work together, or maybe for like the audience that are on Bullhorn, like what would be a real life scenario of where kind of this combo can be a game changer for folks?
Yeah, no, it's definitely complementary, and we designed it that way. I think, you could always do some automations, right? But we don't want to, that's not the core, direction, right, for CanIQ. It's really how do we make Bullhorn, everything in it, operate much more efficiently and make it easier to use as well. So in terms of Bullhorn automations, this is where people, often like title normalization, even to say, hey, I have 50 variations of a title, but with Bullhorn automation, it's sometimes hard to discover what those title variations are. So it's easy once you know them, right? Hey, I have all these different variations. These are almost the instructions. So CanIQ really helps you understand what data is available, how you would use that information to then set up a Bullhorn automation, or there's even information that might not be available in Bullhorn, like company size or industry that we're generating, and that helps you trigger other automations within the system, as well as normalizing skills, right, and getting that data in there. And another one that, especially for search and match, we have one client, they had, I think it was, they target a large competitor of one of their clients, and they have 30 or 40 different versions. And so they had this like massive Boolean search string of like, because if there's a space after or before it, right? Like, how do you identify the versions that people have? And in our system, you can just, quickly type in, partial name of that company. It'll give you all, its index. So it tells you the volume and how many records are associated with that. Boom, like that's your instructions. Okay, put that in a Bullhorn automation to convert all of those anytime it sees it to your standardized format for that client. And that also, like, the more you do that, it just reduces the thought and decision-making process on recruiters in terms of like, how do I fix this data? How do I use it? So it's really, Bullhorn Automation is a great way to drive some of those, fixing that data automatically, and we can help in that discovery process.
No, I think that's great. I mean, Joe, you live automations day in, day out. It's probably a word you hear on almost every call you're on. So I'm sure you probably can kind of talk to how you've seen data and utilizing Candidate IQ can also help drive automation significantly for some of our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really, if we look at it, there's a world in which these two systems really play together nicely and make life a lot easier, right? And I guess to use a silly analogy for any baseball fans out there, you really have kind of your systems that are bringing leads in, whether that's your manual process or that's upstream systems that are feeding the ATS. That's your starting pitcher, right? Let's get the game moving. Let's get a couple innings in. And then you have Candidate IQ really as the setup man, right? Great. We have all this new data. Let's standardize it appropriately. Let's make sure everything is set up and ready to go in terms of the information. And then Bullhorn Automation can come in as the closer and really knock it, finish out the game, right? So if we look at, remove from the silly analogy and kind of look at what that looks like tactically, right? Data's feeding in, whether it's manual or it's automated through integrations, your leads are in there, your candidates are in there. They need to be refreshed. They need to be standardized. CIQ does a great job of doing that without the need for a massive amount of intervention, right? That will just run behind the scenes. That'll make sure that you have appropriate category specialty skills. That'll make sure that you have valid phone numbers and email addresses. That'll make sure that we're standardizing titles appropriately there. So that's really step one, right? Get your house in order. CIQ also gives you real power at your fingertips to go look at that. Andrew made a couple statements there, and I want to unpack it a little bit. The ability to go say, hey, here's what I want to go do research on and get counts for it, that's pretty massive. Like that's a really nice thing to have. That's not well, I need to go write up a report or I need to go write an automation to do this. It's a little more of at my fingertips search to get that knowledge. Knowledge is power. CIQ can certainly go update that, and then you can complement it with an automation strategy to say, hey, this was a problem. Let's make sure it does not continue to be a problem. I have that automation running now. Those two systems work in conjunction with each other really well, and you iterate on that. I think the next spot where Bullhorn Automation really comes in nicely is those automations to clean up data. We already have those running, so I'm kind of pushing that to the side. That's maintaining our database in conjunction with CIQ. The next logical landing point with automation is let's put a standard operating procedure or a best practice business process in place using automation. So simple but powerful things. Hey, you have an interview next Wednesday. Like, here's what you can do to prepare. Here's what you need to expect. Automate those outreaches. It's not something where we put the onus on the recruiter. The automation will do that for you and ensure that we're creating a powerful and cohesive journey for the candidate there. All the way through, if we look at, well, you're on assignment now. How was the first day? How was the first month? How was the first 10 days? Whatever the case may be, keeping those touch points up, keeping the relationship going. The reality of the situation is you've done all the hard work getting them on assignment. Go leverage that benefit, right? You've developed that relationship. You've put someone to work. They're appreciative of that. Keep in contact so that as soon as that assignment's done, hey, we saw this role. Like, this is really something that could appeal to you. Like, would you like to talk more about it? Do you want to be on assignment again? Would you like to continue, earning a regular paycheck and providing for your family? Like that's powerful human connection. And in all of that, we continue updating the data, whether through Candidate IQ or complementary automations, to ensure that something like, hey, that job that we matched you with, that's based on semantic job matching within Bullhorn Automation, which is super reliant on good and updated data for skills, right? So it just continues building. The flywheel keeps spinning.
No, I love that. And that's really kind of showing that connection. And I mean, really kind of what we're getting into now is talking more about what's that recruiter's experience? How can they really leverage this? How can they free up their time, but really focus on people and get rid of those mundane tasks that are the first day follow-ups where they need to be. So, I mean, in looking at this, if we kind of like dive in here. Let's really get into the recruiter side of the house. What's holding recruiters back, do you think, the most today from being successful within their day-to-day? Is it bad data? Is it too many clicks? Are they just not knowing where do they really need to start? And Andrew, I've been leading with you, so I'm going to continue my trend. And then Joe, I promise you, I'll give you a first opportunity to chat first. But Andrew, I'll start with you first on this one.
Yeah, and it's an interesting question, because I think everyone ideally, right? You want to have recruiters working in Bullhorn on a day-to-day basis, right? That should be the source of truth. We've always talked about, and this is why we love working with staffing firms, is because it's your inventory, right? It's your private marketplace. How do you manage that? You have to know what's in there, right? You have to make sure it's reliable in terms of interacting with it. But it feels like recruiters have been so burned in the past of just working with sort of legacy data or out of sync, and so you have a lot of LinkedIn or other job boards, or we'll just rely on posting, and then we'll just screen through to, like, what was there. So I think there's just a lot of issues that have come up in terms of just how do you build trust with the recruiter to really improve, like give them wins. But also we see, like, I mean, if we're going to update 1 million records, right, there's still going to be, even if it's 95%, there's still going to be some random anomalies that occur. And sometimes it's like the recruiters are almost looking for, like, the reasons why it doesn't work versus, hey, 9 out of 10 records are amazing. Before it was like 30% of my records. Like, this is really cool. So I still think there's a little bit of trust issues in terms of really embracing using that database. I think getting that support. We talk about standard operating procedures around how to get data in there, what to expect. If you run into issues, how do you flag it? And then how do you let KNIQ or other people deal with rectifying that information? So I think it may have strayed off the initial question, but
No, that's good. I think it's all kind of valuable information that we have here. And Joe, I'll kind of give you a minute or less here to also answer the same thing of kind of diving in of what's really holding recruiters back that you see the most today.
Yeah, I think Andrew really hit the nail on the head there, and it's the human condition, right? If
Yeah.
I see subpar results, I am going to become frustrated, morale will dip, I'm going to start questioning, does this tool even work? Is this data even reliable? What the heck am I doing? You feel unsupported. And I think really by giving clean data, by giving someone the ability to do the job to the best of their ability, let their ability dictate it, not the quality of the data or not the quality of the tool dictate their, the job at hand. That it's a massive psychological boon to really just feel invested in, right? And that's what we're getting at here.
No, completely. And I know one of the kind of orange points that we have here on one of the slides is that one of the big things is recruiters can spend up to 10 minutes a day correcting. Well, actually, sorry, 10 minutes a record, not 10 minutes a day, 10 minutes a record to fix candidate data. So Joe, I told you, I promise you, see, I'm keeping my word here that I'd start with you on this next one. So I will. But how would you say, like, removing this busy work, if we were to remove all of this kind of updates that we're doing manually and like can get rid of these mundane tasks, like what are you hearing from clients of how this can also improve the overall? You mentioned morale, you mentioned also just kind of day-to-day activity. What would you say from that? Like, how can this also help?
Yeah, so I mean, I think really I'd look at it from two different vantage points. One from, I'm the recruiter, what's my experience in the day to day? It's going to be better. You're freed up to go be a person that is a human being and establishes relationships, has the more qualitative conversations with the candidates, builds a relationship, builds a long-term relationship ideally, right? So that we can continue to thrive together. So I think that's the biggest piece as a recruiter is, I don't need to go sit there and manually input data or tweak it and deal with the frustrations there, deal with the whack-a-mole aspect of bad data. I get to go identify with other human beings. That's what excites me. So I think that's absolutely massive. If I look at it with, kind of my executive hat on, the other knock-on effect that, we really haven't spoken about here is, if people can operate more efficiently and we're automating these tasks, a computer will always move faster than a human being, assuming that we have the proper setup there. You don't need to go employ part-time employees to go clean up this data, or offshoring, or whatever the case may be. You can just go automate that, free your rock star recruiters up to go make those relationships, develop those relationships, and nurture those relationships. And it makes you much stronger as an organization overall.
Couldn't agree more with you. And also the fact, which we haven't even mentioned, is like retention rates. When you have a system that has strong data and your team, your recruiters are not spending X amount of time trying to research and get the accurate information in there, I mean, you're going to retain those rock stars. They're going to be there much longer. Andrew, anything for you to comment on that front? And I'll kind of start with you on my next question.
Yeah, just just making sure that that data is making their work life, balance happy in terms of like they come there and they're getting good quality experiences working with the data. I think also in healthcare, like a lot of that data has to be aggregated in your own system. It's not really available elsewhere. So you're building these pieces, putting them together, and then the more quality data recruiter has, right, it just makes them happier in their day-to-day work. The results, right, like that they're going to see that come back from interacting with the system also pay it forward. And then even like we talked about search and match. Sometimes there's no zip codes, so like radius search doesn't work, and then you start to blame the whole system, right? It's frustrating. Where fix that problem, now it's you're giving them those wins that they can keep building on, and focusing on much more productive interactions with recruiters, or making recommendations on new automations, right, to help continue to make their job easier and more efficient.
Totally agree. Okay, I'm gonna bring up a question that probably is going to resonate with many that are listening here. I'm a recruiter. I'm in my ATS. I'm trying to search and nothing is coming up because the data is a mess. And I know that there's candidates in the system. How, Andrew, would you say candidate IQ would help with this? Like, what does it do for bullhorn searching? Does it make it sharper? Am I going to see stuff? Like, I'll let you start with that.
Yeah, I think I jumped the gun on that one too, in terms of the
I know
zip
you
codes.
already
I mean,
referenced a bit of it, but I'll let you dive in more.
yes, that's a big one. And the nice thing is, like, when we go in and we do this as just a free engagement where we'll look at and we'll analyze the record, so we can really see sort of what's missing, what should be there, right, to make sure that search and match is working or automations are working. So that's the nice thing. It's very obvious. And then we just have conversations with the team of like, what's frustrating about your lack of search, or when you're operating in bullhorn, like what is missing that you wish you had. And then we can look at the data and be like, yes, like we can find it, we can put it in there. There is ways to hyper accelerate that in terms of knowing, hey, we have good quality emails and phone numbers and the titles that they want and the skills, like put them in a tear sheet, and now you can search within that tear sheet knowing that you're going to have extremely high productivity working that list. So it's whether it's the skill normalization that we're helping to manage, right, get in the system so that the Boolean searches are a little bit easier. We can also add in even things like industry or company size, like based on their preferences of how they search, right, and look for their targeted candidates. We can really help to do what we call pre-search. So getting that data, cleaning it up, simplifying it. Even like on skills, you have companies that have like job titles as skills. Like that's not a skill, that should not be in there, right? Or you have just non-skill information, but then now that populates in the database. So you think about that noise reduction, and then doing all the cleanup, the pre-work, and organizing the information, which now it makes it much easier for the recruiters to just use the more simplified search capabilities. And then also what we're doing, especially for historical data, we're adding in, when available, what we call a CIQ bio. So this is saying, hey, this is an external resume, right, or last known information on this person. So it could be their whole LinkedIn profile. It could be a resume that they've added in the past, but we're putting that in the system as well. And now that's always searchable. So what we were surprised too is there's a lot of just staffing firms that have just no resume at all. So just like a name and a title, maybe some information. Well, how do you find something, right? And often it's great, like it's a snapshot of the LinkedIn profile. Sometimes it might be like the last one or two positions, but it provides all that information now for them to be able to search on, to know who they are, and then either take immediate action or, hey, we should put them in a tear sheet and go reach out to them to say, we'd love to connect. You came in the system a few years ago. So there's all of that around just the pre-population organizing, knowing what's in there, and then how do you focus your time and effort on different strategies.
No, that's huge. Joe, I'm going to give you 30 seconds or less, just kind of given our time here. Do you have anything to kind of add to that?
Yeah, so I teased out a couple concepts that Andrew mentioned and really just give CIQ their flowers a little bit. A couple really powerful things that he mentioned that really, if we're distilling it down to the essence of the message, CIQ plays really nice with Bullhorn, and that is because of really purposeful design in seeking a great understanding of what's a difference maker within Bullhorn. So we've hit on radius searches, we've hit on skill searches, we've hit on missing, CVs, missing resumes. Like, they are providing solutions to those issues to ensure that you can leverage Bullhorn search capabilities to the fullest. A resume search is a very powerful thing. It'll do a keyword search within Bullhorn. If that doesn't exist, you're cutting yourself off at the knees. So CIQ is providing a lot of great inroads to ensure that we're getting the most out of the searches within Bullhorn. The last item, and I'll try and keep it brief here, with Andrew mentioned a really powerful thing there, associating those records to a tear sheet in order to go get more information from them. You can do that via the ATS. You could also do that with a really nice Bullhorn automation. So there's flexibility, there's different inroads you can take, and CIQ has done a fantastic job of making it really actionable and intelligent, but also leaving the options open in terms of what each client might want to do with their tech stack.
Totally makes sense. I appreciate that. And you guys, we're going to jump over now to some of the big pain points that we've seen quite a bit of. And I'm giving the guys here about 7 minutes total. So I've got 3 questions. We're going to see how this goes for this, because we've already covered a lot of like the data quality. Why is it important? How can we kind of get in with the candidate enrichment to help our recruiter performance? Can we like reduce those mundane tasks and start using candidate IQ for data quality? But one of the big things, and we did touch on it really briefly, but one of the big pain points that we identify a lot is obviously the duplicates records that are in there. But something we haven't touched on is missing skills. And skills is kind of how we run our searches. Every single candidate has skills. So it's got to be like a nightmare that I know for some companies. Joe, kind of jumping in for you here, but where do you feel that like candidate IQ can kind of help with this, with those skills, with those duplicates, or is it candidate IQ? Where do you go for this front?
Yeah, so I think there's plenty of options in the toolbox. I think if we look at independent of candidate IQ, it's going to be, we can work with clients, we do all the time, to generate the criteria, run SQL queries, export the results, look at that, analyze, refine. Is it possible? Absolutely. I would argue it's easier if you have CIQ in the mix to go start analyzing your data. It's really easy to search. It's an intuitive tool. Tease out some of those concepts that either A, you might be thinking are an issue and you want to confirm, or B, probably not an issue, and then you go uncover a bunch of dupes, on that criteria that you didn't expect to see. So the qualitative analysis of data is much easier with CIQ. I think that's where we've seen a lot of success with some of our clients with, well, we know there's an issue. We've found these particular items. Let's go combat that by merging these records. And Newberry's a nice, easy follow on with like, great, let's go do it. Let's get those records consolidated, take care of the ATS, clean up your data, with CIQ as kind of the tipping point of, let's go run that analysis. Let's understand the issue at hand in much more detail.
So you've kind of dove into like the how can we solve for some of the duplications. Andrew, what would you say is kind of a strategy for identifying why these dupes happen up front?
Yeah, typically it's going to be the source, or people think that something's like preventing duplicates when they don't realize it is, and then you quickly identify that, right? And we see this a lot with just web applications that come in, or then they also apply through Indeed, right? People are pretty creative. Sometimes people have multiple different emails as well, right? Personal one they use for jobs. So that's where just quickly identifying the sources, like, is there a common pattern to this? And then that's where, even working with Newberry and understanding, okay, how do we make those corrections to that? Is there, the web forms or anything else that we're working with? Like, what changes need to happen to prevent that in the future? And that's Again, like Indeed, that's one that stands out. Also, if the information was never parsed properly, so if a resume came in there and that never ended up. So often when we do large database refreshes, someone might think that they don't have many duplicates, and then all of a sudden, like, oh wow, like we just didn't know this was all buried in the system. Or maybe they had an email two versus email one, and it never matched. There's addresses, sometimes there's name variations. So it's just nice to be able to quickly look at the source, what's going on. Sometimes recruiters, will put information, copy and paste like the resume, so it never goes through parsing, so it never gets populated properly. So all these little like things that we can just quickly identify and make sure we have a plan in place to correct.
No, I think that's good. I think that's probably a helpful tip for everyone that's also listening. Kind of my next question that I have here, and we've kind of got it up of one of our big pain points here is the importance of skills and taxonomy. And Andrew, you and I have talked many times about this as well, as we've had clients that have been in the middle of this. But and it's so one of the things, if we're looking at this, is how do we kind of what can we do for this? We have a lot of times, like in the tech space, you see a lot of clients that will have the same skill. We got Java, JavaScript, Java Dev. On the healthcare, you may have RN, registered nurse spelt out. You have nurse, so you have nursing. So I know it feels kind of like a small thing that we're chatting about, but this ends up being a really big deal for a lot of different clients. What do you say happens when we don't have standardization of some of these skills and taxonomy? What is like the problems that you're seeing, and how do you think Canada IQ can help with this?
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic. And in the past, we had actually created deep neural networks to try to do this, independently. So you heard of the intelligent agent world, but that's very complicated. And so what we've done is we partnered with TextKernel because they are the experts in this, right? And so in parsing, right, you talk about building that data quality foundation. What we're able to do is, as we are, working with TextKernel to parse all that data, we know what they have a very robust and very high quality skill taxonomy already built. And so within CanIQ, we can look at what are your current skills? How does that map to what TextKernel would be generating? And then what we can do is, if TextKernel has a certain name that you don't like because it's more formal, you can actually change that to however your team thinks about that skill, whether Java, cashier, whatever it is. But that whole managing of and normalizing those skills is really critical. And then also saying, I don't want all the skills to be populated, right? If you have 15 different marketing skills, but you just want that as marketing, that's really critical. Because once we write back, we had one client, I think it was 2.5 million skills that we wrote back, but it was all vetted and audited, right? And this was like 100,000 records, so it wasn't crazy, but they went through and they said, these are the ones we care about. Let's map them all and get them in their system. And for them too, like, it was a breath of fresh air, because a lot of this comes in from like their website, and skills weren't getting populated. They're asking recruiters to do it. Resumes weren't getting in the profile properly. And so all of a sudden it was just like flip of the switch. And now they can properly organize, right, and assign different candidates to the right recruiters, the right tear sheets, right, and then now they know what their strategy is moving forward because they have that skill and taxonomy information.
Yeah, which also goes right back up to our recruiter performance. How can we also give them better search results? How can we reduce the amount of manual work? So yeah, so skills and standardizing your skills, making sure you have everything in place with TextKernel. I mean, obviously seems to be super, super critical on this front. Okay, the last slide I'm going to jump into, the future data and recruitment. This is our final round. Big picture, kind of want to chat through here. What's next for automation and database enrichment database enrichment? And what are you most excited about heading into 2025? This is my second to last final question here. And Andrew, I'll start with you on this front.
Make it quicker, but I think for me, it's, we've been working in this space for 10 years now. We have a whole data science team. We've been very bullish on this, but you're finally seeing people realize, right, everyone's becoming a data company, and they have to have these data strategies in place. I'd love to see sort of in the future, even a data quality product manager, just sort of data product manager, right? Like, it's becoming central, and you're seeing people embrace it. And I think there's also this, curiosity within, some of these leaders were like, we really want to embrace this. We want to figure it out. And so I think everything's just starting to come together, and next year is going to be very exciting as data quality automation and AI and a lot of the different ecosystem partners and, Newberry coming in to help make that a success. So it's here and it's real. And I think it's just great to see.
I love it. Joe, we'll go to you.
Yeah, I think we'll continue to see the trend of automation. That's no new concept. We see many firms leaning into that wholeheartedly as we look at the economic challenges that we've recently experienced here, and just supplementing team efforts, removing the busy work from their plates with automation. So I don't see that going anywhere. I see that continuing on an upwards trajectory. If we look at AI, I think 2024 was very interesting. We see it everywhere, every conference, 90% of our client conversations, the term pops up. It's very pervasive, but I would also characterize it as you have the leaders in the industry that are leaning into it, both on the client end as well as, SI partners such as Newberry. You see that with the leaders. I think the laggards are coming along now and realizing the benefits of the power of job matching utilizing AI, or additional tools within their tech stack utilizing AI, or even diving into AI their own using internal IT or engineers for interview questions, really just supporting the recruiting experience throughout with AI. So I would expect to see that trend continue. The commonality between those two items would be you need good data in order for these programs to be effective. So it really all does tie together quite neatly there. And I think, as Andrew mentioned, we'll see roles opening up. We'll see renewed focus on, wow, we have these endeavors. What do we need to do to ensure those are successful? Well, good, clean data.
Love it. Okay. This is a question that everyone that is still listening it's going to be like what you're here for. So last question of kind of the webinar, your final thoughts. If you had to give staffing firms one piece of advice for going into 2025, what would it be? Is it about automating better? Is it about cleaning up their data? Is it something else entirely? And Joe, I'm going to give you the final opportunity to go first here, and then I'll end it with Andrew and wrap us up.
Yeah, I would start with understanding, where is your tech roadmap going? Do you have a documented tech stack? Do you understand each and every input and output? So get that down on paper. It sounds so simple. There's a staggering number of firms that don't have that. We certainly help a lot of them with that. Get that tech stack down, identify the priorities for your organization for 2025, and then allow that to dictate the strategy of, well, we need to clean the data up with this in mind. Contextualization is wildly important there. And the main contextual piece would be, what systems are we focusing on right now? What are our biggest pain points? And how do we strategize to most effectively mitigate those particular pain points?
Huge. Andrew, final words here.
Pick a champion. I think we see the most success when somebody says, hey, this is our dedicated person, right, who is using automation, or they're focused on data and they have some authority, or at least senior enough to make decisions and have a little weight in terms of, seeing recommendations, be followed through on. So I think that's the biggest thing. Like, have someone raise their hand, like that is your job. It's not by committee, right? Although others can be involved, but it's just night and day difference when you have that and the support from leadership and somebody they want to figure this out. They want to maximize automations. They want to make the data work, with AI and search and everything else, and pick that person, let them run.
I love it. And I'll throw my 2 cents in here as well. So you can't optimize technology without strong data. And if you have crappy data, you're going to have crappy technology results. So that is what I truly say all the time. So you guys, this has been great. I absolutely love having you here. I want to I don't see any questions. If there's any questions from the audience, I appreciate you guys staying with us. Feel free to kind of put them into the chat. And if you don't have anything, I'll let you. Not seeing anything yet, but I feel like we truly have a lot even more that we can unpack. So I would not be shocked if we have something also coming for everyone here in Q1. And for those of you that are still here, you guys, thank you so much. And Andrew and Joe, thank you guys for spending all this time with everyone. And let's have an amazing 2025. Let's get that data quality right. Let's make technology where it needs to be. And you guys have a great holiday and a happy new year.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Aaron.